Welcome to Echoes of the Past, where hidden truths and forgotten tales from American history are brought back to life. Today, we're stepping into a dark chapter, buried for nearly 2 centuries, a story of wealth, power, deception, and chilling betrayal inside one of Pennsylvania's grandest mansions. What begins as a tale of privilege quickly unravels into a haunting mystery of manipulation, madness, and murder. If you love uncovering the secrets history tried to hide, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Echoes of the Past, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a journey into the shadows of our past. Now, settle in, turn down the lights, and let's begin the story. For 25 years in 19th century Pennsylvania, a wealthy industrialist named Jeremiah Hartwell married 5 different women. Each bride entered his enormous mansion on Beacon Hill full of life, bright, healthy, and happy. But one after another, each woman met the same horrifying end, a total collapse of the mind. Just months after moving into the same luxurious bedroom suite, the pattern was impossible to ignore. It was too precise, too controlled, to be a curse. Poor, tragic coincidence. When the truth finally came out in 1835, it didn't just shake Millbrook County. It rattled the entire state of Pennsylvania. Investigators uncovered not bad luck, but a calculated, cold-blooded plot. A deliberate plan that had been quietly destroying women's sanity for decades. Tonight, we'll dive into the chilling truth of what really happened inside that mansion, and how one man pushed 5 wives to the edge of madness with methods so carefully executed. They remain deeply unsettling even now. Before we get into the story of Jeremiah Hartwell and his doomed brides, be sure to subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comments which state you're watching from. You might be surprised at just how close this dark history unfolded to where you live. It all began in the prosperous town of Millbrook, nestled in the coal-rich valleys southwest of Pittsburgh. By 1820, the industrial boom had transformed this once quiet farming town into a bustling hub of factories and wealth. Smoke poured from ironworks along the Monongahela River, and the new elite built lavish estates on the hills overlooking the valley. Jeremiah Hartwell arrived in Millbrook in 1821, just 25 years old, hungry for opportunity. Unlike many men of wealth in that era, he hadn't inherited a fortune. He built one. Raised in rural Ohio by a blacksmith father, Hartwell learned early that success demanded both brains and ruthless drive. Within 5 years, he launched the Hartwell Iron Works, producing crucial railroad components as America pushed westward by 1828. His towering mansion on Beacon Hill was complete, a 42-room Georgian masterpiece with imported marble, sprawling gardens, and a master bedroom that took up an entire wing. Local newspapers called it the pride of Millbrook. The bedroom, in particular, drew admiration. Elegant French wallpaper, towering windows with sweeping valley views, and a massive cherrywood 4-poster bed that looked like it belonged to royalty. But Hartwell's fortune wasn't the only thing that turned heads. Standing over 6 feet tall, with sharp blue eyes and striking silver hair that arrived early, he had a commanding presence. He knew how to charm, how to make every person in the room feel important. High society gatherings revolved around him, and prominent families practically competed to introduce their daughters. When he announced his engagement to 19-year-old Margaret Dunlap, daughter of a respected judge, the entire town celebrated. Their October 1829 wedding at St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church was the social highlight of the decade, drawing more than 300 guests. But by spring, subtle changes crept into Margaret's behavior. At first, it seemed like the natural awkwardness of a young wife settling into a grand new home. Known for her bright wit and lively conversation, she began to drift during visits, often gazing out windows with an uneasy intensity. Her sister, Catherine, later wrote in a private letter that Margaret spoke about the house as if it were alive, sometimes pausing mid-conversation to glance at empty doorways, as if listening to something unseen. When I asked what she heard, Catherine wrote, she smiled strangely and said, "Just the house settling, dear sister." Old houses have their own language. By summer, the changes were undeniable. Margaret refused to sleep anywhere but the master suite, claiming the rest of the house felt wrong. The staff, who had been charmed by her gentle nature, grew uneasy. They whispered about her watching habit, the way she'd stand at the bedroom windows for hours, not to admire the gardens or the bustling town below, but to stare at her own reflection, shifting her head slightly, studying herself from odd angles. The breaking point came on a humid night in August 1830. During a dinner with several influential Pittsburgh businessmen. Margaret suddenly stood, walked to a tall mirror in the dining room, and began speaking to her reflection, not just murmuring, but holding a full conversation. She seemed to be arguing with the image, one guest later wrote in his journal. At times laughing, a high, strange laugh I had never heard before. She kept asking her own reflection why she looked so tired, as though she expected an answer. When Jeremiah gently tried to guide her away, Margaret grew upset, insisting the conversation wasn't finished. That same night, at around 3 a.m., the head housekeeper, Sarah Quinn, found Margaret in the master bedroom, completely unclothed, calmly tearing the French wallpaper from the walls, strip by strip, when Sarah rushed in. Margaret turned to her with a peaceful smile and said only, "I need to see what's underneath." When the walls were finally stripped bare, they revealed nothing unusual, just ordinary plaster and timber supports. Yet Margaret gave a small, knowing nod, as if something important had just been confirmed in her mind. The following morning, Dr. Harrison Henley, the family's trusted physician, was summoned. His examination found a young woman in perfect physical health, but suffering what he described as extreme nervous fatigue, complicated by obsessive melancholia. In the notes that would later become vital evidence, Dr. Henley wrote, "Mrs. Hartwell exhibits a peculiar preoccupation with mirrors and reflective objects, insisting that the image she sees is somehow independent from herself." Most unsettling is her unwavering belief that this other self reveals hidden truths about the house and its past. Within just 2 weeks, Margaret's mental state had collapsed to the point where she could no longer be left alone. She became consumed with the idea that every mirror in the house contained hidden messages meant only for her. Spending her days drifting from one reflection to the next, holding full conversations with what she called the other Margarets. Attempts to cover the mirrors only provoked violent outbursts. She clawed at the coverings until her fingernails tore and bled. The final breaking point came on the night of September 15th, 1830. Somehow, Margaret managed to collect every mirror, polished utensil, and reflective surface in the mansion, and arrange them in a strange, deliberate pattern throughout the master bedroom. She spent the entire night in what the housekeeper later described as a meeting with her other selves. By morning, she no longer recognized anyone around her, not even her husband, and spoke only to the reflections, insisting they were her true family. After consulting medical experts in Philadelphia, Dr. Henley made a heartbreaking recommendation. Margaret must be placed under professional care at the Pennsylvania Hospital for the Insane. On a bleak October morning, as autumn leaves swirled outside the Hartwell estate, she was taken away in a closed carriage, calling back over her shoulder, "I'll be back soon." She never returned. For the next 43 years, Margaret lived inside that institution, never regaining her sanity, never giving up her desperate search for mirrors, even within her small, restricted room. Her commitment sent a shock through Millbrook's social circles. The incident revealed just how complicated society's attitudes toward mental illness were in the 1830s. Some whispered of family curses or moral weakness, but many of Millbrook's elite rallied around Jeremiah, viewing him as a man cruelly struck by misfortune. At the time, medical opinion often blamed women's mental health crises on everything from overexertion to the disruption of traditional domestic roles. In his official report, Dr. Henley suggested Margaret's breakdown had likely been triggered by overstimulation of her nervous system, the sudden leap in social rank, and the heavy responsibilities of managing a large household. It was an explanation that fit neatly within the era's common beliefs about women's fragile constitutions. For 3 years after Margaret's confinement, Jeremiah Hartwell lived as a withdrawn widower. He maintained his business operations, but avoided all social events. The master bedroom was locked up, its furnishings covered in white sheets, while Jeremiah relocated to a smaller room on the 3rd floor. Servants reported that most evenings he shut himself away in his study, reading medical texts and corresponding with physicians about Margaret's condition. During this period, Hartwell grew obsessed with what he called the science of mental affliction. He built an impressive private library, gathering volumes on everything from phrenology to the latest European theories on the nervous system. Personal journals discovered decades later paint a portrait of a man genuinely haunted by his wife's fate, desperately searching for a logical cause behind her collapse. In 1833, the news arrived. Margaret had passed away in the asylum. Her final years had been marked by a steady physical decline that mirrored her mental deterioration. The funeral was small and private, attended only by close relatives. She was laid to rest in the Hartwell family plot at Millbrook Cemetery, her gravestone engraved simply with her name, dates, and the words, "Beloved wife at peace." Margaret's death seemed to close one chapter of Jeremiah's life, but those who knew him best noticed a subtle change. His business partners remarked on his almost obsessive neatness, the constant polishing of mirrors in his office, and a new habit of checking his reflection several times during meetings, as though confirming he appeared ordinary to everyone else. More telling, he began speaking of marriage again, though not in the tender language of romance. Instead, he discussed it with the same cool, measured tone he used for business arrangements. He even drafted what he called compatibility assessments for possible wives, evaluating them like potential investments. It was during this phase, of his life that Jeremiah met Elena Rodriguez, a 22-year-old daughter of a Spanish merchant recently connected with Pittsburgh's rising industrial market. Elena was not only strikingly beautiful, but also displayed what Jeremiah described as exceptional mental steadiness during their courtship. Their engagement, announced in the spring of 1834, surprised many who had assumed Hartwell would never marry again. Yet those who observed the couple noted that Jeremiah seemed to regain some of his old confidence, while Elena appeared genuinely delighted to be taking up her place at the Beacon Hill estate. The wedding, held in June of 1834, was quieter than Hartwell's first, but still elegant enough to meet social expectations. When Elena moved into the mansion, Jeremiah made a choice that would later seem chillingly significant. He reopened the master bedroom suite, had it entirely redecorated, new wallpaper, new furniture, and, most notably, installed an entirely fresh collection of mirrors. Elena stepped into her role as the new mistress of the Hartwell estate with both elegance and excitement. She adored the master bedroom, often proudly showing it off to visiting ladies, drawing attention to the way its mirrors caught and scattered the light across the spacious suite. Her favorite piece was the grand vanity mirror, where she would sit each morning and evening, brushing her long dark hair, while chatting cheerfully with her maid about the day's plans. For the first half of her marriage, Elena seemed to flourish. She quickly became a beloved figure in local society, admired for her kindness, sharp wit, and genuine curiosity about others. Unlike the quiet, timid Margaret before her, Elena carried herself with effortless confidence, the perfect hostess for Jeremiah's gatherings and business affairs. But as the winter of 1834 turned into the new year, subtle changes began to creep into Elena's behavior. By February of 1835, the first troubling signs emerged, eerily similar to those that had once haunted Margaret, though the household staff had been strictly forbidden from ever mentioning the former. Mrs. Hartwell's decline, Elena's personal maid, Maria Santos, who had come with her from her family home, kept a private journal of her mistress's unsettling transformation. Those pages, discovered decades later in the mansion's attic, remain the most detailed record of what truly happened. Signora Elena spends far more time before her vanity now. Maria wrote in early February, "This morning she sat brushing her hair for nearly 2 hours, yet she wasn't looking at her own face. Her gaze stayed fixed just to the side of her reflection, as if she were watching someone else. When I asked if she needed assistance, she whispered, 'She's trying to tell me something, Maria. I must listen carefully.'" By March, Elena's fascination had deepened into what she described as conversations through the glass. She moved from mirror to mirror, pausing, listening, responding not as though speaking to herself, but as if answering another voice. Unlike Margaret, whose interactions had grown frantic and disturbed, Elena's dialogues seemed calm, even pleasant. "She tells me things about this house that no one else knows," Elena confided to Maria one afternoon, "about the family who lived here before us, about secrets hidden inside the very walls. She even gives excellent advice for managing the servants." Dr. Harrison Henley, still the Hartwell family physician, was quietly called in as Elena's strange behavior became harder to ignore. His private notes revealed deep concern, not just for her health, but for the uncanny parallels to the tragedy of Margaret. Yet there were important differences. Margaret had become incoherent and agitated, while Elena remained poised, intelligent, and capable in every aspect of her life, except for the mirrors. The turning point came in April of 1835, when Elena gathered the household staff and made a startling declaration. Her conversations with the mirror woman had revealed that Margaret had never truly left. According to Elena, the former Mrs. Hartwell was still here, her spirit trapped within the reflective surfaces, desperate to warn those who came after her. Elena is convinced that the mirrors themselves hold a presence. Dr. Henley wrote to a medical colleague in Philadelphia, "Unlike cases of religious mania or classic delusion, she remains perfectly rational in every other regard. She manages the estate, engages socially, and exhibits no physical symptoms of illness. Her obsession is singular, focused entirely on mirrors and the secrets she believes they contain about the house's past." This time, Jeremiah's response was not frantic medical intervention, but deliberate study. His journals from the period show a man attempting to chart a disturbing pattern. Elena's condition progresses along a path strikingly similar to Margaret's, he noted, yet with just enough variation to suggest an environmental cause, rather than mere weakness of constitution. Both women were healthy prior to occupying the master suite. Both developed mirror fixations within months. Both claimed access to hidden knowledge through their reflections. Hartwell began conducting what he called controlled observations. He noted which mirrors provoked the strongest reactions, at what times of day her episodes intensified, and what specific information she claimed to learn. The results were deeply unsettling. Elena's most vivid experiences always took place in the master bedroom, between sunset and midnight. and always centered on the same ornate vanity mirror that had consumed Margaret. The conversations followed consistent patterns. Questions about the house's history, answered with unsettling detail about past residents, hidden rooms, and secrets that must never be spoken aloud. Most chilling of all was Elena's claim that the reflection had finally told her what had truly happened to Margaret. According to Elena, the first Mrs. Hartwell had never lost her mind. She had discovered a truth so dangerous, so damning, that she had been silenced, her sanity questioned to protect the secret. The mirror woman says Margaret knew too much. Elena whispered to Maria in May of 1835. That's why they had to make her appear mad, to keep her quiet. But she's still trying to warn us. She says the truth will not stay hidden forever. By the height of summer, Elalani's strange behavior could no longer be hidden from the Millbrook elite. She began refusing invitations to gatherings unless the homes had mirrors, insisting she needed to consult her mysterious advisor for proper topics of conversation. At events without mirrors, she grew restless and withdrawn, often leaving early to return to her bedroom consultations. Everything reached a breaking point in August of 1835. One suffocating evening, with the heavy heat pressing against the mansion, windows like a living weight, Elena delivered a revelation that shook Jeremiah to his core. He found her seated at the vanity mirror, not chattering as usual, but utterly still, hands folded in her lap, eyes locked on her reflection, her face carrying a sorrow he hadn't seen before. "She's shown me the truth about this house," she whispered, never turning her gaze. "She's told me what really happens to the women who live in this room, and what truly drove Margaret insane." According to Jeremiah's journal from that night, what followed left him stunned. Elena spoke of hidden spaces within the mansions, secret rooms and narrow corridors where, she claimed, past residents had been imprisoned and subjected to horrific medical experiments. "Elena has built an intricate fantasy," Jeremiah wrote. "She believes Margaret uncovered these crimes, and that her mind was deliberately broken to silence her. Most unsettling, she claims the mirrors somehow hold the memories of these events, accessible only to women who spend enough time in this suite." But Elena's accusations weren't vague ramblings. She described in startling detail the mansion's structure, hidden passages linking the master bedroom to unused areas, and even devices built into the walls to watch unsuspecting occupants. Most shocking of all, she accused Jeremiah of secretly drugging his wives, giving them substances that clouded the mind, created hallucinations, and made them seem insane to outsiders. "The medicine for my headaches," she confronted him. "It's not medicine at all, is it?" She showed me what it really does, how it makes women see horrors that aren't there, how it convinces everyone else they've lost their minds. Jeremiah's reaction was swift. The next morning, he brought Dr. Penley to assess his wife's condition, emphasizing her growing paranoia and her sudden fixation on conspiracies. Already troubled by the similarities to Margaret's case, Henley warned that Elena might soon become violent if not treated immediately. Mrs. Hartwell has developed a fully formed delusional system, Henley noted, nearly identical to Pat of the first Mrs. Hartwell. Her claims of secret construction and hidden plots suggest a complete detachment from reality, worsened by isolation and the pressures of running such a household. But Alina wasn't ready to be quietly locked away. Instead, she launched what she called her investigation. Over the next few days, she and several staff members, including her loyal maid Maria, scoured the house, tapping walls, feeling for hidden panels, searching for proof. And then they found it. Behind a wardrobe in the master bedroom, Maria tapped on a section of wall that sounded hollow. A closer search revealed a disguised panel that, when pressed, swung inward to expose a narrow passage between the walls. The cramped corridor just wide enough for someone to squeeze through. Connected several second-floor rooms and contained tiny observation holes that peered into the bedrooms. The mirror woman was right, Alina told Maria with breathless triumph. If this part is true, then all of it must be true. The discovery sent panic through the staff and shook Jeremiah to his foundation. His journals from those days reveal a man losing control. Elena's madness has led to the discovery of features I never knew existed, he wrote. The previous owner never mentioned such passages. I can only imagine they were built for purposes beyond my comprehension. Yet my wife now interprets every architectural detail as proof of a conspiracy against women, wives especially. Word of the hidden passages spread quickly through Millbrook's gossip circles, and the questions began. How could Jeremiah not have known about them? What were they originally for? And most troubling of all, how could two wives suffer nearly identical mental collapses centered on the same bedroom and the same mirrors? The pressure intensified when Elena's father, Don Carlos Rodriguez, arrived unannounced from Pittsburgh, a sharp-minded businessman. He was not one to accept easy answers to uncomfortable questions. His visit revealed a daughter who seemed perfectly sane, except for her unwavering belief in the mirror woman's revelations. When he confronted Jeremiah, his tone was calm but cutting. "My daughter tells me she has found evidence of crimes in this house," he said. "I suggest you tell me everything now." That night, tensions in the Hartwell mansion reached a breaking point. Don Carlos called Jeremiah to a private meeting, where his daughter made a shocking claim. Someone had been secretly drugging her, pushing her mind into a state of confusion and fear. These were not the kind of allegations that could be brushed aside, even if they came from someone already suspected of losing touch with reality. Just when it seemed this twisted tale had reached its peak, the darkness surrounding the Hartwell estate grew even deeper. If this story has you hooked, share it with a friend who loves a chilling mystery. Hit the like button to support the channel, and subscribe so you never miss another tale like this. Now, let's push further into the truth. Behind the madness of Hartwell's 5 wives, the confrontation unfolded in the mansion's library, a deliberate choice, as it was one of the few rooms without a single reflective surface. Alina insisted she had to be present. She refused to discuss her future until she could consult her advisor. When she realized there were no mirrors nearby, she became frantic, demanding a hand mirror be brought at once. "I cannot decide without her," she cried. "She knows the house. She tried to warn Margaret. She's trying to save me, too." But Don Carlos didn't treat this as delusion. Unlike others who dismissed Elena's strange claims, he leaned in, asking calm, precise questions about what this mysterious woman in the mirror had told her. The answers chilled the room. Elena began describing details no one could explain: names, dates, hidden features of the house from long before she had ever stepped foot inside. Jeremiah tried to dismiss it all as chance or nonsense, but the more Elena spoke, the harder the defense became. She described private business dealings, confidential letters, even conversations that had taken place in the very library they sat in. Conversations she had no way of knowing. "The woman in the mirror sees everything," Elena said quietly. "She's been watching this house for years. She knows about the secret arrangements, the hidden records, the real reason Jeremiah bought this property." Piece by piece, the story shifted from a medical concern to a criminal scandal. According to Elena's revelations, Hartwell hadn't chosen this mansion for its beauty but for its hidden passageways and spying opportunities. His business empire had been built on stolen secrets, and his marriages, far from romantic, were strategic, meant to cloak what was really happening behind Beacon Hill's elegant doors. The charged meeting was interrupted by Dr. Henley, summoned by Jeremiah to testify about Elena's supposed illness. But Don Carlos turned what was meant to be a sanity hearing into a cross-examination. Don Carlos asked, "How do two healthy women develop the same bizarre symptoms in the same house, under the same man?" Dr. Henley hesitated. "Unusual but not impossible. Certain environments, isolation, exposure to unknown substances, perhaps even substances capable of creating vivid hallucinations, making a person believe they were recalling real events." The air in the library grew heavy. Both women had been poisoned or drugged. Then their madness wasn't madness at all, it was sabotaged. Elena grew restless, agitated, insisting again and again on a mirror. When denied, she blurted out details about locked rooms and hidden compartments in the mansion, details Jeremiah insisted she couldn't possibly know. Finally, in a burst of desperate clarity, she stood. "She's shown me where the proof is," Elena declared. She led them all upstairs to the master bedroom, straight to a section of wall behind an enormous wardrobe. Following her directions, they uncovered a hidden panel. Inside was not just the secret passage Maria had once stumbled upon, but a sealed compartment containing papers, ledgers, and materials that would tear Jeremiah Hartwell's carefully constructed world apart. By the dim glow of a lamp, Don Carlos examined the documents. What they revealed was more horrifying than even Elena's mysterious advisor had hinted. Decades of deceit, greed, and manipulation buried in the walls of the Hartwell estate, now finally dragged into the light. The first breakthrough came from a weathered leather ledger hidden deep within the mansion. Inside were meticulous notes describing secret observations made through the concealed corridors. Page after page revealed overheard conversations, private dealings, and sensitive discussions recorded without a single participant's knowledge. In Jeremiah's unmistakable handwriting, the entries outlined how he leveraged this information, influencing investments, pressuring rivals, and turning confidential talk into powerful bargaining chips. March 15th, 1829. Senator Patterson met with associates in the drawing room to finalize the railroad's northern route through Millbrook Valley. Portfolio adjustments made accordingly. June 3rd, 1829. Judge Dunlap confessed his gambling debts to his wife. Valuable leverage for upcoming court cases tied to the ironworks. But the spying was only the surface. Beneath a loose section of flooring lay a bundle of oil letters, a chilling correspondence with Dr. Heinrich Zimmermann, a German physician notorious for his treatments of female hysteria in private facilities across Pennsylvania. His letters, written in a mix of English and German, described a calculated process to induce targeted mental instability in women who threatened their husbands' ambitions. Through carefully balanced doses of mercury, laudanum-based compounds, and hallucinogenic plant extracts, Zimmermann's method created confusion and obsession while leaving the victim physically capable, appearing sane to casual observers while spiraling into destructive delusions. The brilliance, Zimmermann boasted in one letter, is that her irrational fixations appear to outsiders as nothing more than exaggerated feminine tendencies, perfect camouflage for discrediting dangerous truths. Mirrors, he noted, were especially effective, feeding an obsession that looked like vanity gone mad. Elena's cries about being drugged were not delusions at all. They were accurate, desperate warnings of a systematic poisoning meant to mimic natural mental illness. The headache remedies Jeremiah provided were laced with substances designed to distort sight and thought, their effects sharpened by isolation and psychological pressure. Margaret Hartwell had not simply succumbed to a nervous collapse. She had been methodically poisoned after stumbling upon evidence of Jeremiah's surveillance network. Her terrifying visions in mirrors and frantic warnings were not madness. They were the tortured signals of a mind under chemical assault, dismissed by society as insanity. And then came the most horrifying discovery: documents that exposed Jeremiah's empire in full. His schemes went far beyond blackmail within the mansion walls. He had built a private intelligence service, trading secrets for influence among Pennsylvania's political and industrial elite. The hidden corridors weren't just spy holes. They supported an intricate web of recording tools, document forgeries, and storage for compromising materials. His marriages weren't born of affection. They were strategic alliances. Each wife served as a respectable hostess and unknowing asset, gathering whispers from drawing rooms and dinners while staying above suspicion. When Margaret grew too curious, she was silenced with Dr. Zimmermann's chemical torment. When Elena started asking questions, the same vile script was played again. confident that the ignorance of contemporary medicine would shield him from consequence. Don Carlos did not hesitate. A seasoned businessman with powerful allies across western Pennsylvania, he saw at once that the papers in his hands were proof of a criminal web, and that his daughter's life hung in the balance. "Alina leaves this house tonight," he declared coldly, "and these papers will go straight to the authorities." Then, turning to the family doctor, "Dr. Henley, I trust you'll be revising your diagnosis now that we know what's been done to her." The physician, pale and shaken, answered carefully, "If these documents are genuine, then both Mrs. Margaret Hartwell and Mrs. Elena Hartwell were victims of deliberate poisoning, their suffering engineered to appear as madness. Mrs. Elena should recover once the toxins are fully purged from her system." Jeremiah, astonishingly, stayed calm, the composure of a man who had rehearsed for disaster. "These so-called documents are clever forgeries," he insisted. "Alina, in her unstable state, has fabricated both the letters and this wild conspiracy to fit her delusions." But Don Carlos was prepared. Producing the bottles Jeremiah had been giving Alina, he said firmly, "Then you'll have no objection to independent analysis of these medications. And I'm sure you won't mind handwriting experts confirming whether these ledgers are yours." Before Jeremiah could reply, another voice broke through the tension, steady, grim, and long suppressed. From the doorway, Sarah Quinn, the head housekeeper of over 10 years, stepped forward. "I can't keep this secret any longer," she said, her voice tight with emotion. "I've watched 2 good women destroyed in this house. Mr. Rodriguez, your daughter is telling the truth, every word of it. I've seen him mix those medicines. I've seen him slip through the hidden corridors to eavesdrop on guests. And I've seen, with my own eyes, what those concoctions did to the women who slept in this room." Sarah's testimony was the missing piece, the final confirmation that Alina hadn't been imagining anything. As the head housekeeper, she had free run of the estate and years of silent observation weighing on her conscience. More than anyone, she had watched Margaret's slow descent into madness and recognized the exact same symptoms beginning to take hold of Alina. "I was the one who prepared those doses Mr. Hartwell gave his wives," Sarah admitted, her voice shaking under the burden of guilt long hidden. "He told me Dr. Henley had prescribed them, but they always arrived in plain, unmarked bottles, delivered quietly, never through the local pharmacy. When I asked about it, he said they were rare remedies from Europe, experimental, unabailable." Here, Sarah's description painted a picture of cold, deliberate cruelty. She described how Jeremiah would steadily raise the amount of the unknown chemicals, carefully timing them for when the women spent the most time in the master bedroom. She had watched the same eerie progression in both wives, their growing obsession with mirrors, their retreat from society, and finally their minds slipping between reality and hallucination. The worst part, Sarah whispered, was seeing them try to explain what was happening and no one believing them. Margaret swore someone was spying on her through the walls, said her meals tasted off, claimed the mirrors showed impossible things. Everyone wrote it off as hysteria. But when Alina started saying the same things, I knew this wasn't coincidence. Dr. Henley's professional reputation wavered like a candle in the wind as the horrifying truth took shape. The remedies he had prescribed for headaches and nervous exhaustion had been swapped out for Jeremiah's poisonous mixtures, administered under the cover of medical care. His own diagnosis of mental illness had unknowingly given Jeremiah the perfect smokescreen, allowing him to destroy his wife's credibility while keeping his own image intact as a grieving, devoted husband. I need to examine Mrs. Elena at once, Dr. Henley said, his calm cracking under the weight of revelation. If she's been poisoned with hallucinogens over time, there may still be evidence in her system, and treatments we can begin immediately. But even cornered, Jeremiah Hartwell revealed the calculating mind that had made him powerful in both business and deceit. Rather than outright denial, he shifted tactics, offering what sounded like a partial confession, one designed to limit the damage. You're correct, he said coolly. I've used this house for surveillance. The secret passages were here before I bought the property, installed by the previous owner, a man in the same line of work. I kept using them because they gave me an edge in negotiations and investment decisions. It was a clever strategy. Admit to the spying, deny the rest. He insisted that both wives had stumbled upon the hidden corridors, and that the shock and stress of learning about his covert dealings had driven them into mental collapse. The medicines, he claimed, were genuine treatments that tragically failed. Margaret became convinced I was spying on her personally, Jeremiah explained. She twisted business matters into a belief that our entire marriage was a fabrication. Once that idea took hold, her condition deteriorated quickly. Now Alina is doing the same, building elaborate conspiracies to explain perfectly ordinary business practices. Under different circumstances, the story might have worked, but the letters from Dr. Zimmermann in Germany were damning too. Precise, too aligned with the women's symptoms to be coincidence. Don Carlos wasn't about to let Hartwell escape through technicalities. We'll let the courts decide whether your actions count as business strategy or criminal conspiracy, he said coldly. For now, Alina leaves this house under the care of physicians untainted by your lies. As the tense standoff neared its end, Alina, who had been sitting quietly through much of it, finally spoke. Her voice was steady, clearer than it had been in months. The mirror woman isn't gone, she said calmly. She's still here, still trying to warn people about what happens in this house. But now I see her for who she really is. She isn't a reflection, not a ghost, not madness. She's me, the part of me that stayed sane while the rest was being destroyed. Her words reframed everything. The mirror woman had never been a phantom at all. It was Elena's own subconscious, the rational part of her mind fighting through the fog of drugs, creating another version of herself, capable of remembering, of observing, of piecing together the truth. I remember everything now, Alina continued, her eyes sharp with clarity. Every conversation I overheard through the walls, Every document I read, while Jeremiah assumed I was too dazed to comprehend. Every detail of his dealings with Dr. Zimmerman. The mirror woman wasn't giving me secrets. She was the piece of me that refused to forget what he tried to erase. She had been helping me unlock information that I had gathered myself, memories that were buried under the haze of Jeremiah's drugs. The moment Alina regained her clarity and Jeremiah's schemes were exposed, a shock ripped through Millbrook and the broader Pennsylvania business world. Don Carlos immediately turned the collected evidence over to county authorities, while Dr. Henley began compiling records to prove that Elena's supposed madness had been deliberately manufactured. Within mere days of halting Jeremiah's treatments, Elena's symptoms began to melt away. Her fixation on mirrors disappeared, her sharp mind returned, and she could finally separate the visions the chemicals had produced from reality. Most importantly, the memories that surfaced fragments gathered during her drugged state painted. A full picture of Jeremiah's criminal web for investigators. The legal battle that followed would later be called the Hartwell conspiracy. The trove of documents hidden in secret compartments throughout the mansion chronicled years of spying, blackmail, and the trading of private information that had tainted political and business dealings across western Pennsylvania. Jeremiah's clientele turned out to include corrupt judges, crooked officials, and ruthless businessmen who had all paid handsomely for damaging secrets about their rivals. Margaret Hartwell's tragic death was no longer seen as an unfortunate decline into madness. Investigators exhumed her body and, using the best forensic techniques available in 1835, discovered traces of mercury and other poisons. It became clear she had been slowly killed, not lost to mental illness. Her death certificate was changed from natural causes to homicide, opening the door to murder charges alongside conspiracy and fraud. The Pennsylvania Hospital for the Insane, where Margaret had spent her last years, turned over detailed medical records. These revealed that Margaret often experienced moments of clarity during her confinement moments, when she repeatedly claimed that her husband was poisoning women to protect his illicit dealings. What doctors had once dismissed as the delusions of a mentally broken woman were now recognized as the testimony of someone enduring systematic chemical torture. Sarah Quinn, the head housekeeper, ultimately provided the testimony that solidified the case. Her intimate knowledge of the household routines, combined with her eyewitness accounts of both wives' steady deterioration, gave prosecutors a precise timeline that matched perfectly with the administration of Dr. Zimmerman's experimental compounds. She even revealed that several house guests and business contacts had reported unexplained illnesses after visiting the Hartwell estate. Authorities tracked Dr. Zimmerman to Philadelphia, where he had been carrying out similar experiments on patients. At a private asylum, his arrest revealed an even darker truther network of physicians and businessmen using medical treatments as weapons to silence inconvenient women throughout Pennsylvania and neighboring states. Newspapers dubbed it the poisoning conspiracy, as the scandal implicated dozens of prominent men who had used similar tactics against wives, daughters, and female associates who threatened their power or profits. Jeremiah Hartwell's trial became one of the most sensational in Pennsylvania's history. The prosecution leaned on Elena's clear, first-hand testimony, Sarah Quinn's precise account of the mansion's operations, and the mountain of documents found within its walls. The final blow came when Dr. Zimmerman agreed to cooperate, describing in detail the compounds he'd created and the ways they mimicked insanity while leaving the body functional. The defense tried to cast Jeremiah as a porno man deceived by corrupt physicians into believing his wives were truly unwell. But that narrative fell apart when prosecutors presented evidence showing that Jeremiah had personally sought out Zimmerman, requesting drugs that would simulate madness without disabling the victim. The jury took little time to decide. The verdict: guilty on all counts, including first-degree murder for Margaret's death, attempted murder for poisoning Elena, and multiple charges of conspiracy, fraud, and extortion tied to his spying and blackmail operations. The judge's ruling reflected the scale of his crimes: death by hanging, to be carried out within a month, by December 1835. As Jeremiah awaited execution, Elena was fully recovered. She returned to her father's home in Pittsburgh, gradually rejoined society, and later married a merchant who imported goods from Spain. She lived a long, peaceful life, but never again spoke publicly of what she endured at Hartwell Mansion. Beyond what she had already told the court, the mansion itself became a grim landmarker, symbol of both the ruthless side of America's industrial boom and the vulnerability of women in a culture that too often dismissed their suffering as hysteria. It was sold to settle Jeremiah's debts, eventually converted into a boarding house for railroad laborers. The secret corridors were sealed, the mirrors removed, and the notorious master suite divided into smaller rooms, erasing the spaces where so much pain had unfolded. Yet the legacy of the Hartwell case reached far beyond the property or the man who once owned it. The scandal prompted reforms in Pennsylvania's mental health laws, requiring independent medical reviews and stricter oversight of private asylums. It also sparked broader discussions about the misuse of medicine as a tool of control and the urgent need to protect women's legal rights in a society eager to doubt them. Dr. Henley, devastated to learn he had unknowingly played a role in a terrible poisoning plot, dedicated the rest of his professional life to uncovering how toxic substances affect the human mind. Using funds granted through settlements from Jeremiah's estate, he pushed forward new methods for identifying poisons and reversing their effects. Over time, he also emerged as a strong voice for women's medical rights, insisting that female patients deserved the same respect, attention, and care routinely given to men. The truth about Margaret and Elena's suffering forced society to confront a deeply unsettling question: how many other women across the country might have been quietly silenced in the same way, declared insane for the convenience of the men who controlled their lives. Records from the era suggest the Hartwell tragedy was not a lone case, but part of a much broader hidden pattern of abuse that likely claimed countless victims, whose stories were never told. The case became a powerful reminder of the importance of believing women when they describe strange or frightening experiences, no matter how unlikely they may sound at first. Margaret and Elena's desperate warnings that they were being watched, drugged, and controlled were once dismissed as delusions, when in truth they were clear and accurate accounts of crimes committed against them. Today, the land where the original Hartwell mansion stood has been transformed into a quiet park on the outskirts of Pittsburgh, a historical marker placed there in 1985, 150 years after Jeremiah's execution, honors the victims of the conspiracy. Its words are simple, yet haunting. In memory of Margaret Dunlap Hartwell, Alina Rodriguez Hartwell, and all who suffered medical abuse. Their courage in seeking justice laid the foundation for the patient protections we rely on today. The Hartwell story reminds us how easily trust can be betrayed, and how essential it is to listen when someone says their reality doesn't match what others want to believe. Could there be more victims, hidden away in the shadows of history, whose stories we'll never know? What do you think? If this mystery kept you on the edge of your seat, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Your support helps us bring you more dark, twisted stories from history's forgotten corners. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and keep questioning the world around you.